Hello fellow medieval engineers, Gopescope here from the Gopescope gaming channel, and I'm happy to bring you the sequel to The Anatomy of a Castle Part 1. When we left off, we had just added a secondary gate to our castle, which as you may recall, allowed our defenders greater flexibility when under siege, as well as providing the convenience for our land's inhabitants of not needing to go quite so far to reach a gate. Now that we have some basic defenses, let's look to some of the interior features any lord or lady would like to have within their fortified abode. Here we have the living area of the keep, located in the upper point of the structure. These rooms are housed within a wooden construction known as a hoarding. Here we have a dining room and bedrooms, which are sometimes called solars, as well as a garde-robe, which in French means wardrobe, but is also the term for a medieval toilet. This part of the hoarding projects over the side of the keep's wall, allowing waste to fall outside the structure into a cesspool or a moat below, thereby preserving the delicate sensibilities of the keep's noble inhabitants. And as you can see below, the garde-robe is supported by these wooden beams, which are known as bressimers. As we descend into the darkness below the keep, we find ourselves in the dungeon, which, as you may recall from our last episode, ultimately comes from the Latin dominarium, meaning lordship. But you won't likely find much in the way of lordship in this foul and black place. However, you will find some guards of quite likely questionable character, who may also be in charge of torturing those unfortunates who find themselves trapped in such a place. Perhaps the most subtly sinister of features one might find in a dungeon is the oubliette, which is French for forgotten place. An oubliette usually is just a simple pit with only one opening, high up in the ceiling, where an occupant cannot reach. If someone needed to just disappear in a dungeon, they might be dropped in this dread pit, left there to starve, suffer, die, and rot. The things are getting a little bit dark, however, so let's put this whole dungeon in a metaphorical oubliette and forget about it, as we move on to more pressing concerns outside. We need some early warning system so that our castle's defenders know in advance if an enemy army is approaching, so that they have ample time to bring needed supplies and people inside the walls, and perhaps construct some additional defense structures before the enemy army reaches the castle. A small tower such as this, or even sometimes just a fortified house known as a peel or redoubt, located near our border, is just what we need. From here, a small garrison can keep watch over our frontier with enough protection to keep them safe from small enemy formations, and enough height to allow them to spot large enemy formations as they approach so that they can sound the alarm, or light the signal fire as the case may be, to warn the castle of the impending attack. There must be an enemy approaching. The signal has been lit, so let's bolster our defenses with some wooden structures on the top of our walls. This is known as a brattice, which can be constructed relatively quickly to prepare for a siege. While these wooden walls can stop arrows, thereby providing cover for defenders, they can only provide concealment to our defenders by obscuring the movements of the castle's defenders when it comes to more destructive weapons such as ballistas, catapults, mangonels, and the fearsome Trebuchet. Our lord is alive, and the castle has been saved, but the attackers very nearly carried the day. We need to rebuild, and it would seem we need to add something further to bolster our defenses against future attacks. Let's start by adding a moat. Though commonly thought of as a water-filled trench surrounding a defensive structure, a moat could also be dry. Whether filled with water or dry, the moat causes difficulties for attackers, whether they are trying to scale the walls with ladders, wheel a siege tower or battering ram into position, or attempting to tunnel beneath a wall or tower. Now we have a problem. Our own people can't get into or out of the castle without trudging through or swimming through the moat. Here is where the drawbridge comes into play. The drawbridge is simply a wooden platform or ramp which can be raised or lowered at will using a system of counterweights, pulleys, and/or gears. When lowered, the drawbridge acts as a bridge to cross the moat, and when raised it denies attackers the ability to easily cross to reach the gatehouse. After that last close call, the lord of the castle demands even better defenses, however, and so he has ordered the construction of a barbican. This structure is akin to a gatehouse, but is generally far more heavily fortified, and is usually situated outside the primary lines of defense of a castle or a city. It is also usually connected to the rest of the fortification by a walled walkway, sometimes referred to as the neck. A major issue in the last conflict was the defenders' inability to access the gatehouse and walls from within the castle, so an addition has been added to the back of the gatehouse, which will allow for access to those critical areas. And finally, the Lord has demanded that the defenses of the keep proper be bolstered, and so a fore building has been added. This defensive structure is essentially a gatehouse for the keep itself. And with that, we've come to the end of this episode. We have made numerous improvements, and I think that the castle will fare much better in future attacks. But alas, history has shown us that for every advancement in defense, there is some clever mind who will contrive a way to defeat it. Guile, ingenuity, and their child, technology, prove time and again the folly of static defense. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to see more, please hit those like and subscribe buttons. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.